Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Freedom International Livestream. I bring you divine greetings and I want to greet you with absolute humility and gratitude for everything that you've been doing to share all our streams to other people and everything that you do to contribute to this movement, because without each and every one of you, we will all feel like we're talking to the wall, or where things are not going anywhere. So we're really happy. And after this live stream, it will be posted up in all different platforms in BitChute and Rumble. As you all know, we come from different parts of the world with different backgrounds. So we have joy in really putting our critical minds together so that we don't have to just limit ourselves with one perception, one information, and then we are not even able to accumulate these things and put it into practice. Because the most important thing is, from this conversation, whatever resonates to you, act on it. Okay, so sometimes we said is enough of talking, enough of thinking, but act on it, on where this will lead us to sovereignty, freedom, and truth. So today, now, we are most honored and privileged and excited to have Mikki Willis. For most of you, I believe you know Mikki Willis, and his name is synonymous with pandemic. Okay, and for those of you who don't know and you still haven't seen it, for heaven's sake, go and look for it. Okay, just look at it. So when I first saw that movie, or just even the title, I said, "Wow, what a powerful word!" Because then what resonates to me is pandemic. Now this is going to be beyond what we've been talking about, the V, and all the V's. Okay, but we're going to all this pandemic, and when it's pandemic, there's someone, something, some system behind it. So Mikki is an independent filmmaker, and he's respected globally for exposing corruption at the highest levels of government, politics, education, business, and medicine. And that really is important, because many claims to be a filmmaker, many claims to be a journalist, and yet it doesn't bring us to anywhere, but is still being quarantined in our mind. Okay, and just being like siphon, being like a vampire with all our energy. So this one of a kind show that they've been doing holds the title of the world's largest single screen film event, and that is the Elevate Film Festival. And it's they've been doing a lot of documentary films, and of course, one of the most celebrated and also vilified, and just most some people hate it, is that movie Pandemic, with a billion views. So as I said, go and look at it. So behind every powerful creation and art is a story of the creator. So that's where I want to start. Mikki, why didn't you just become just like everyone else, doing all these other films, and then you don't have to sacrifice your whole life, your whole family, your whole whatever you're trying to do? So what is the story behind your being what you're doing now, from the pandemic and even before the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I was pursuing a very traditional and normal career as a filmmaker in Hollywood for a number of years. And it was my experience that I had at the World Trade Center at 9/11. I was near the World Trade Center when it was attacked, and went to the scene and did search and rescue and body recovery for 3 days. And that was a life-changing experience, to say the least. And it was a snap to grid moment for me. So when I came back to Hollywood, suddenly all the stuff that I was okay with before, I was suddenly starting to question. I had a big career as a music video director, and I was making commercials and all sorts of things that I thought was the goal. But suddenly I was looking at the legacy of my work, and I had the thought, when I have children one day, is any of this worthy of showing them? Am I proud of my work? What have I contributed to this planet and to our people? And it was kind of alarming to me that I went through my repertoire of work and my portfolio, and I thought, there's a few cool moments that I would show my kids when I have them, but there's really nothing that I can stand by and say that this is what I brought to the world. And so it really kind of shook me, because what I had experienced as I was working in search and rescue at the World Trade Center was kind of a deeper aspect of humanity. And I witnessed men and women that after having been told that the air they were breathing would likely kill them, no one left at the very slight chance of rescuing one living person. And it showed me that at the core, when something happens that's so much greater than all of our own, self-prescribed identity and our addictions and fetishes and all the material stuff that we become addicted to, that there's something really good at the core of humanity, and we'll risk our lives for it. And so, coming back into Tinseltown, as they call Hollywood, and doing the same level of work just to sell products or to sell albums for musicians that didn't necessarily have a good message, and all of that suddenly came into focus for me. And I thought, I either want out totally, which was a scary thought to me because all I really know is this business, or I need to recreate my life and reinvent myself and how I'm going to navigate through this world that of Hollywood that tends to suck your soul. And so I left it for a year and a half, and that's when I developed the idea for Elevate Film Festival, and that I would do my part in helping others have the same awakening that I had, to remember that there is an original dream that we all have that brings us into this world we call entertainment. And it's to tell stories, and it's to move people, and it's to advance us in our evolution of humanity, not just to sell products and to make corporate monopolies more powerful. And so that just changed my path. And since then, I've been taking that step by step to the next level. And I have now a lot of other artists behind me, or in front of me and next to me, who have all had the same awakening. So it's growing rapidly, and it's a very reassuring and wonderful thing to witness.
Oh, thank you so much. And I myself really are impressed and grateful for artists like you, because in a lot of the change in society, if artists really play a powerful role. And so, as a father, since you mentioned about the movies, and many of times lately, most of us have been saying, it's in the movies, they've been showing it to us and we're not paying attention. And then of course we think about the children. So now how do you manage that in terms of you as a father and for your children? And then what is the best thing that you're doing right now, and so that maybe the parents listening to us can have that assurance of what they need to do in terms of entertainment?
That's one of my favorite subjects to talk about is parenting, particularly fatherhood. I will say, to your first statement about the power of art and creativity and storytelling, they say art imitates life, and I'd like to say it's the other way around. Life has a tendency to imitate art, and so we have to take responsibility as artists to understand that the kids are always listening. The messages that we put out, they get. If you think about somebody giving a speech, maybe a TED Talk, a few million people will see it once. But a song is something that many people, millions of people hear over and over and over. And that kind of repetitive messaging really sticks in our subconscious. And so when artists understand that what they're putting out in the world actually shapes their world and creates the environment that they and their family must live in, I hope more artists take responsibility to understand that there's some things that perhaps we should leave out, and a lot more that we should put in that will actually advance us in our evolution together. Regarding your question with what I teach my sons, I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they're remarkable young men. I don't keep anything from them. We've never lied to them. We started from the beginning, my wife and I said, there is no Santa Claus, there is no Tooth Fairy, there is no Easter Bunny. We're going to tell you straight up what the world is really like. We're not going to ever have that moment when you realize that all the big people in your life lied to you. We're going to tell you that magic is a trick, and we're going to show you, I'm going to show you how it works, and letting them behind the curtain and have that respect of not toying with their imagination, but allowing them to find the beauty, the magic in the trick itself, and marvel at a magician's sleight of hand, and to actually choose to play the game of Santa Claus and still have the conscious relationship to what's real and what's not real, but to still play the game. It has been remarkable way that I've noticed that they've become empowered to become little truth seekers themselves. They now are even at my 7-year-old will overhear a video that I'm listening to as I'm researching, and he'll sometimes dissect it and tell me exactly what's going on. He'll say, it sounds to me like those politician people are trying to get everyone scared to make everybody do what they want. And he's 7 years old, and he'll tell me, and I'll say, that's exactly right, buddy. It's a really great assessment of what I'm listening to right now. But above all, the thing that, if I had to pick one thing that will save our next generations, is our educational systems have become so corrupt, and within them they have been for decades teaching the children what to think as opposed to how to think. And so as a result, we have a cognitive process that is askew, that is causing our young people to lose touch with what is real and what is not real, what is good for them and what is bad for them. And so when we teach our children how to think, how to process critically information, as opposed to telling them what the answer is, but to let them find their own answers respectfully, giving them, guiding them through the selection process, but to really actually teach them. For an example, if one of my sons becomes upset with the other one for any reason, they rarely fight, which is just a miracle. But when they have a disagreement, I'll ask the last time it happened was my 7-year-old was upset at something that his 10-year-old brother did. And so the question was, who in this moment is steering your attention? And that question in itself allows them to stop and think, what, steering my attention? Yes, your attention. It's like the steering wheel of your focus, and who is steering that right now? And the moment they come into me, yeah. So are you steering it in a direction that's healthy for you right now? That's healthy for your relationship with your brother? What's another possible choice that you could look at? Because right now it sounds like you're a victim of your brother. And what is more real? And I'll say, well, what's real is that my brother did something that I didn't like. Okay, but so you have a disagreement. And so instead of assigning a story to your brother that he's mean, or he doesn't like you, or he doesn't care, then we can boil it down scientifically to, you have a disagreement. He thinks that's left is the way to go. You think right is the way to go. And how do you work that out now without assigning the emotional stories to it that then become between your relationship? You can just look at it for what it is, and that is a disagreement of direction. And they understand this at a very young age, and then they start to become emotionally intelligent, such that they don't allow big dramas to get in the way. My boys are the first ones to always tell their friends, that's not proper use of your tears. And so what they mean by that is we had a talk a long time ago about, I said, you'll hear in this life that men don't cry, and that's not true. Crying is a very powerful tool, but it is a tool to not be abused. You don't cry when you're trying to manipulate. You don't whine when you're trying to get what you want. And we talked about the boy who cries wolf a lot. We say, if you cry all the time, then when you really need comfort and support, we might not be there for you, because we may mistake it for something that you're exaggerating about. And so if you can use proper use of your tears and use them when you really have something to express, then people will be there for you. But don't misuse them and don't abuse them. And so they're very clear about how to not manipulate with their emotions. And that is one thing that a lot of parents have a struggle with, is when their children start to run their lives. And because they become a little emotional, and we learn this at birth, right? The very first really interaction that we have was, we feel the pain of hunger, we make a sound, a crying sound, and then we get fed. And so as we grow up, we think, okay, all I need to do is whine or cry and I can get what I want. But this becomes a problem as we get older. And we're seeing that now in the streets with a lot of the movements that are being led by children, young people who are whining about things instead of taking right action and finding justice in a better way than burning down our cities.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that sharing of your experience. I did the same with my son, and so he never had a Santa Claus picture. So, and then just other things, and making him be a critical thinker even at young age, even like determining if, oh, do you notice if someone is using drugs or not, so that I don't have to worry that if he is around people and he happens to then he would notice that and to stay away with it. And so it seems like what I'm hearing is it's so important that these teachings of self-sovereignty and respect really begins from us as parents, and then molded, and just we do our best within the home. And of course, once they're in their adult stage, they have to do their own journey for that. Now, when it comes to the adults, what else can a filmmaker, can an artist really do to help so that more and more people could really see what the pandemic, what the plans are, so that, as you said, we have the power to alter the direction, to steer it in the way that it will be beneficial for, and beneficial for what the source wants us to be, to be more, not to siphon each other's energy.
Well, it's very important that I used a metaphor a moment ago about magicians, and it's very important that we learn the tricks that are being used against us. And so and it blows my mind that there are so many people that are tricked by the mainstream media every single day. It's a magic trick. Everything the media is suggesting us to look at is trying to detour us from looking and seeing the trick hand, right? So most of sleight of hand is done in a way where magicians become very skilled at creating some kind of diversion, whether it's a joke with, some of the audience or whatever. And while that's happening, this hand is doing something else, and it's flipping the card or whatever it's doing. And so this is a tactic that's used by the mainstream media. Anything the mainstream media, and I'm talking about 95% of the mainstream media, anything that they're focused on, telling you to focus on, is the trick. And so reverse engineer that. Understand that if they're telling you to look that way, the truth is probably that way. And so be aware of that, because we're so easily led. They say, be afraid, this is what's happening, they're the bad guys, and then we start moving like cattle in the direction that they're guiding us in. Instead of going, stop for a second, you've never been honest with us before. All of your advice has either been misinformation, disinformation, or blatant deadly lies that has put our country at odds with other nations and killed millions of innocent people. Why do we continue to listen to you? You're not news. This is nothing to do with news. It's controlled narrative. And so if we understand that from the beginning, then we're ahead of the game already. So the media says something and it says, a new variant, everyone be scared, and this is what's coming. Slow down. But right now, everyone puts their mask on and goes back into panic mode. Slow down a second. Consider what's going on in the world of politics. Consider how they might be leveraging this to get everyone back, because the fear is dwindling, as COVID starts to change shape and all of that. So they have to keep fear alive. They have to keep fear alive. Why? Because fear, there's scientific reasons of what happens in our brain when we go into fight or flight mode. And that's when we just, we become reactive instead of responsive. And when we're in that mode, it's very important to consider that, if you look at the job of an EMT, have you ever seen an ambulance that says an emergency react vehicle? No, it says emergency response vehicle. Because they're trained to respond while the citizens are reacting. So a horrible tragedy happens, a car accident, everyone stands around screaming, oh my God, and they can't believe it shouldn't have happened. They're in a place of denial. EMTs arrive and they say, calm down, tell us what happened. They go to the scene. They show no emotion. So it may look like from a snapshot that they care less, but they're actually doing more good than all the people around that are panicking. And so they stay calm, they assess the situation, and they go there to save a life. And so if we could become more like that, more better trained in the way that we respond to life instead of reacting, then we could actually do more good together. You know, we don't necessarily need others to come in and rescue us. We can respond to a crisis. And so that's, you know, in answer to your question, that's one of the most important things that we can do, is to shift our perspective of the way we see ourselves, because we've been wired to see we're just these lowly humans trying to survive every month and pay our bills. And there are others that are well-trained, and we vote for them, and they're going to come in and make our lives better. It hasn't never worked. It will never work. This is the moment in time in history that we, the people, step forward to lead ourselves, to make our own policies, and to educate our children, to create our own sovereignty. And so it's the same message for creators and filmmakers, is stop towing the line for the people that are at the helm of this agenda. It's amazing to me how many people out there, if you ask them, you say, do you trust your government? No. Do you trust big pharma? No. Do you trust the mainstream media? No. But you're living your life making every decision based upon what the government says, what big media says, and all of them are paid for, funded, and controlled by big pharma. So you're literally towing the line for big pharma executives that have zero liability, and they have killed millions of people with their irresponsible, illegal tests that they experiments that they've done on humanity through time, and yet we continue to pay them with our attention. And so that's what we need to stop doing, and start to create our own unified networks of and for by the people that make those old systems obsolete. That's my long answer to your short question.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll pass it on to Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Oh, wow. Just some amazing nuggets in there. It's an honor to be speaking with you, Mikki. I remember listening to you, and you took your son out to see a man who had no home. You wanted to really show him, and that just so impressed me. I don't have any kids, but it's like, this is the truth, and he's human too. And
that was a video that at the time when my sons were very curious about homelessness, and they were starting to encounter a lot of people on the street, and we were explaining to them that these people are homelessness, and they would say, why? And I said, well, there's various reasons. They may have fallen on really hard times. They may have an addiction problem. They have mental health issues, but it's a major issue here. And instead of just telling them about it, I took them to the streets and sat down with people that were houseless, as they like to be called, and talked about how they got there. And it was an amazing experience for my kids to actually learn how to see them as humans and how to have a greater compassion. So I just wanted to clarify what you meant by that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So there's so much amazing stuff. I guess I'm enamored with your story because I heard you speaking about, you were rooting, you were part of the Bernie thing, and there was this term called democratic socialism, and you were asking people what it was, and they were like, well, it's a new form of communism. And you're like, what? But you were asking people while you're sort of saying, well, okay, so explain a new form of communism. Mm-hmm. And the answers you were getting were unsatisfactory, and you left. I mean, that's just amazing that, it wasn't adding up for you. You couldn't be a part of it, so you left. And I don't know if you're familiar with Alex Newman. Do you know Alex Newman?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So he's, such a smart wit and knowledgeable guy about the kids being indoctrinated, brainwashed, taught nothing deliberately. Mm-hmm. And, so the frustration I have is I know, I was very asleep until 8 years ago. Okay. So the reason I woke up was because I had time on my hands, and part of the trap is also the treadmill. Bombarded with the big life and do this, and then look externally, and you're trying to make ends meet, and you're not living by faith. You're living in fear, and you never have time to think, and that's part of it. But I'm always sort of like say, it's like, I always think in order for people to get it, they need to have a foundation that their government is lying to them. Mm-hmm. But most people don't believe that. What's the motive? No way. They could never organize it. Why would they do that, right? So, but then I come to your brother, AIDS, and we come back to a character, Fraudschi, and the point I'm trying to make is these are career criminals, and these people, the people making decisions right now haven't treated one case of COVID personally.
That's right.
Right. So, your brother suffered at the deliberate hands of a protocol that was, I think, meant to kill AIDS mm-hmm. patients. And the person at the head of that is involved today making decisions. So there's nothing new under the sun, as Mark Passio would say.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to tie a bunch of stuff in. So there's nothing new under the sun, and these are career criminals, and they're not who they think you are. And yes, your government will lie to you, but the thing is, how do we get through the brainwashing to get that wake up idea that this is possible, that that something so crazy is actually been happening for millennia?
Well, that's happening right now at a pace that it really surprises me how rapidly things are happening right now. I knew when I pushed the button May the 4th, 2020 on Plandemic, that I would have to deal with a few years of being a leper in society. I knew what was coming, and but already the tide has turned and is turning. And we have a lot to be thankful for in terms of a really horrific administration that is making one critical error after the next, from Afghanistan, which we're involved in rescues in Afghanistan still today. We got involved immediately when that whole debacle took place, and we're about to release a film, I think tomorrow it goes out, that we did with journalist Lara Logan. And so as all of these mandates continue, as people start to wake up, my team and I have a unique process of research, and that is, we don't just study the headline information and the current events. We also, I call it keeping our finger on the pulse of society. And we study certain comment threads on platforms that people aren't expecting to be read. So as opposed to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, where people are writing for their tribe, virtue signaling for their tribe, there are other platforms, mostly video-based platforms like YouTube and others, where people make comments, but they don't really expect the same kind of engagement of a social network. And when you study those, and we watch all sides of political parties, and so we'll watch a hardcore progressive channels, an assortment of them, hardcore far left channels. We watch the far right channels, the centrist channels, and for the first time in my life, all of those channels are becoming unified in their disdain for what's happening in our country right now. It is kind of mind-blowing to see people that even on, if you read the comments on CNN, which used to just be, a cesspool of delusional ideology, and now they come out and they say, oh, the Omicron, the new variant, whatever, the comments are like, we see what you're doing, people. We understand. Here we go. Just on cue. You're getting us ramped up for another winter of fear because we're heading towards the flu season. We get it. The comment threads, people are waking up so rapidly, and I didn't expect it to happen this fast. So that is something for us to celebrate together. And there's still a lot of people that are sleeping, a lot of people that are in denial, but we have to understand the mechanisms for which holds that hold that in place. And that is, we have here in the West, we have an ego problem. We have an issue with people not admitting that when they're wrong. Being right has been so rewarded that they see being wrong as such a weakness when it's really a strength. You know, you mentioned I was on the road with Bernie Sanders and I was promoting him big time. But what I discovered on the road through, multiple interviews with his staff and supporters and all of that is there was an ideology that I found to be very dangerous, and it was shocking to me. I had to come back into society and say, I withdraw my support and I'm sorry, I was wrong. I was terribly uneducated. I just thought if you threw the word democratic in front of socialism, it meant something different. It doesn't. It is a Trojan horse that will lead us into a place of total totalitarianism, and I was wrong. And so it's important, but with the situation like COVID, when the people have been so fired up to shame each other, to turn their neighbors in, to report each other, family members saying, you can't come to Christmas, you can't, we want to see our new grandchild, but you can't come unless you're all vaccinated. They've made such egregious, strong moves in their lives that for them to come back from that now would mean really sucking up their ego to say, wow, it turns out that, what I was fighting for a year ago, it turns out that a lot of these conspiracy theorists are being proven right day after day. And admitting that takes a really humble person. I really appreciate the opening of this. And it's not surprising coming from a Filipina, because I have an incredible reverence for Filipino people. But to open by saying, in humility and gratitude, these are powerful words that you spoke. And so for us to come back to a place of humility and gratitude is a very, very critical thing. To admit that we're wrong. I would love to see as something that went so big in the world of, like, say, the Me Too movement. I would love to see an apology movement where people just start to post hashtags of "I'm sorry." I now see that I was led astray by a $1 trillion industry that I was fooled by. It's okay to say that, people. I was led astray. I fought people online saying that Bernie Sanders was going to save America. I fought people online. I believed it with every fiber of my being, and I was wrong. And I was told what he would do when he was out of office, or when the campaign was over, and he did exactly that. He supported all the corporate interest and all the false narratives and very destructive narratives about, every wealthy person is evil and oppressing those at the bottom. These are very, very destructive communistic ideologies. And so it's really for us to humble ourselves and to ask ourselves what's more important. It's the same thing we do. My wife and I have been together 20 years, Filipina, 20 years. And we have never had a full-blown fight, never. We've had some really serious discussions. We've had moments where we're incredibly frustrated with each other. But we ask ourselves one question: what is more important, being right in this moment or being loved? And so we stop in that moment and we just say, listen, I see that I'm getting on a bandwagon to fight for being right now. And you don't have to agree with me. And I don't have to be right. I'm going to hold on to my position, and let's not convince each other of everything, of each other's ways. Let's not do that. Let's just come back to remember one thing: I love you. And that stops us from going too far into that righteous position of trying to dominate each other with our own ideologies.
Yeah.
Let her have hers. I might disagree with it. I might think it's absurd, but she can have that.
Yeah. Well, it also, a lot of the nuggets that you and Grace put out were everything. It's like Zen meets Eckhart Tolle meets, meets realizing your true self, which is really, it's about not committing theft on anyone. There's two natural laws, I believe, in the universe: don't commit theft and don't harm another being. And don't harm another being means emotionally, physically, mentally. So if you don't commit theft and don't harm another being emotionally, physically, mentally, you're coming from a place of love. And it's really this drive that everyone's been driven into materialism and scientism and the intellectual mind. We've been trapped in our minds, and that drives us away from morality and love. And you were talking about reacting and responding, and that's one of my biggest things. Your ego reacts and your heart responds. And sometimes responding means saying nothing. And I think the way out of this is for people to go in and to come from a place of love and to respond and not react, and to look at everyone as a brother and a sister, and not to buy, even, I don't care how indoctrinated you are, I don't care how brainwashed you are, I don't care how much you watch the news. It doesn't take a genius to know that it doesn't matter what color you are, or it doesn't matter, whatever you're told. You have the ability to make a decision and to discern and know what's best for you and the people around you. Treat others as you would want to be treated. It's as simple as that.
And it's very important, very, very well said. And it's very important that we regain our natural senses. We have been systemically, by design, severed from this thing that informs nature. All of wildlife, flowers, trees, everything. I bring this metaphor up a lot because we need to pay attention to, if you see thousands of birds flying in unison, moving at the same, as one body, turning on a dime, how do they do that? How do they do that at such rapid speeds, radical changing of directions, all as one body? We take that for granted. We see that and we say it's beautiful, and that's the first step. But then the question should be, how do they do that? And why is it with us that we can barely even be in relationships with people we love? What has happened? Well, in my opinion, we have lost touch with our natural instincts, our way to actually receive this broadcast of divine intelligence that's always available. And the metaphor, it should be, I'm old enough to remember when there was nothing cordless. Everything, it made sense that you go, okay, here's a wire, and this wire is connected to my microphone, and that's going to, oh, well, this is interesting. The pack ends here. Oh, so it's sending out a signal. And I remember dealing with that when I was a younger, curious person, of just thinking, how is this signal of my voice being transmitted through the air and landing in another device that somehow recreates it and broadcasts it exactly the way I sound? That's extraordinary. I remember the first time I experienced a fax machine. I remember this vividly. I remember, and you send a photo and it's turning it into digital information, and it's being broadcast to another country, and it reproduces the photo exactly the same way. And I just marveled at this because I thought, this is extraordinary. And we take for granted these little technologies and innovations in our lives. But if we look at that and we understand that all we're doing is emulating our natural system, as we start to discover and evolve, our intelligence, we then realize, oh, information is transferred magnetically, energetically. And so, but we're still kind of hardwired to the leadership of our world instead of being in this place. And it's one of the reasons is we're so distracted. And when you're busy all the time and you're distracted all the time, you don't have that moment. There's a reason people come back to things like meditation, and it's been happening for thousands of years. And some of the wisest, most grounded, evolved people will talk about meditation because it allows you to be silent enough to listen. To listen to what? Your own head? No, not your own head. That's just recycled data of programmed information. So what are we listening to? We're listening to some divine broadcast that suddenly comes in and gives us creative ideas, the next chapter of our mission, advice, life advice, just some clarity comes in, and you can call that God or whatever you choose to call it, nature, love, whatever. But we have to learn to be still again to receive that kind of guidance, because listening to other people is not working. So we have to listen to our own intelligence that's coming in, and it's always in the air. Like right now, in the room that you're in, and the room that every listener is in, is filled with signals. That's why you can tune your radio to a plethora of frequencies and receive an assortment of musical channels. It's in your room right now. You just have to tune into it. And so we have to learn, I shouldn't say have to, but we have the opportunity to learn of how to tune our systems, our transistor, receivers and broadcasters that is the human body, to tune it into frequencies that better serve us. And that's a process that I think we're right now going to be forced to graduate into, because it's a wonderful thing that we've realized that all the stations that they've hardwired us to are music that is destructive to our future. And so we're tuning that out right now. And we're saying, what music do we choose to listen to? And that's a powerful transition of humanity that I think is going to eventually result in a more awakened, aware, and intuitively evolved and mature collective that is humanity.
Yeah, wow, that's so well said. And also, as you pull off the layers of the programming and the fear and the beliefs, you're really getting out of your head and you're getting into your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And once you pull that dirt, I say we're all born as a perfectly shining mirror, and that's your soul. And then you get dirt thrown on it, and you get beliefs, and you're not good enough, and the mirror, the shining soul, becomes covered, but the light's still there. It's just covered. So if you take off the dirt and the beliefs and the programming and the fear, then you get to your true self, and that's where you can have such appreciation and gratitude and love for someone that a minute ago you thought wasn't good enough for you, or you could do better because of a TV commercial or something you saw in a magazine. You could just burst with love for that person, and that's where we go. And I think this is pushing people. I think this is a collective dark night of the soul. And in some ways, I don't know if it's true about, Rudolf Steiner talks about epochs, and that planets evolve and they mature, and and societies with it, and that the highs and lows are part of it, and that we're in an end time, but it's a necessary part to get to another level. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, then this is somehow necessary, because we've had it too good, and people are thinking about themselves, and it's a materialism, it's a consumerism, scientific mentality, and everyone's looking externally for pleasure and love, but it's all everything you need is within you. And as soon as you start to tap into that, the world can change. And that's
well, you mentioned the term end time, and I think it's important that people reframe what that actually means. It doesn't mean it's the end of the book. It means it's the end of the chapter.
Yes.
And so, imagine your feeling that you get. There's a very particular feeling that we get when we're reading a book and we've actually reached the end of a chapter. There's kind of a sigh of relief, like, okay, there's more to come, but I've accomplished something here. I'm at a point where I can pause now and reflect, and then start a whole new journey within the same framework of the story that I'm already invested in. And so, if we can reframe where we are right now, it's not the end of the book. It's not the end of the story. It is the end of a chapter. And I would imagine that this book has endless chapters, infinite chapters. But we're about to get to a very interesting chapter. And it's one that we've all bargained for, to come here, to be in these bodies, to have this experience. And so there should be some excitement that comes with moving to this next chapter, because it's going to be a challenging one, but one that is filled with a lot of victory and a lot of incredible opportunities to learn and grow.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I could talk forever. Thanks for everything you do. I'm very, very appreciative of your talent and what you put out to society. And I look forward to Plandemic 3, and I'll pass you on to Roy.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Mikki.
Hi, Roy.
We've interviewed a lot of different people, And like I'm noticing, we've noticed it on even some of our guests, the symbolism that they're using, and then just watching different things. So I personally believe that some of them are infiltrated. They're becoming famous to spread the message, but not necessarily from the right point. Have you noticed that? Because you'd have this, I mean, you talk to a lot more, you'd have a bigger circle.
Clarify that question. Have I noticed what exactly?
I call them, we've got the good boys club and the bad boys club, right?
Yeah.
And some of the so-called good boys are putting out symbolism, you know, like the 666, you know, the triangle and different things. I've spotted that a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, is this something that you've noticed or that you're aware of, that there's people that are pretending to be on the right side?
Well, there's always people that are pretending to be on the right side. You know, they call it controlled opposition. But I don't pay attention to a lot of that stuff. I think it can become a big distraction. And one of the subject matters that I've grown very frustrated with is within our movement, the people that are on the front line of really speaking out and who have gained bullhorns loud enough for the world to hear. It's kind of blown my mind that how many times have I had someone call me to say, I need to talk to you. You know, I think such and such. I think Bobby Kennedy is controlled opposition. I think Dale Bigtree is a controlled opposition. I think, and I'm sure they say it about me. And most of the time, it's just pure paranoia. And when we talk about controlled oppositions or psyops, that's one of them. So a lot of the people that are talking about psyops don't realize that they're actually creating a psyop the moment they start talking about all of that, because it's far less. It happens. I'm not going to deny it. I've been involved in a lot of frontline actions as an activist, and they will always send infiltrators, people into, act like they're part of us, and they're actually just getting information, or they're the ones that actually instigate some kind of violence, so then they can create the media narrative that somebody threw a pipe bomb or something like that, and it's the other side doing it. So it happens. I've seen it. I've been there. But 90% of the time when these subjects come up, it's not grounded in reality. And so I pay very little attention to all of that, because for me, there's so many other constructive and proactive things for me to focus on than generating paranoia within my own mind, such that, for me, it's people always say, be careful, because people are, they can infiltrate. Look, I don't say anything off camera that I wouldn't say on camera. We take care of our taxes. We do very legal business. We're not involved in anything that if anyone came in here, they wouldn't hear another secret conversation that could distort things. We're very much who we are privately and publicly. And so I don't worry about it. I think even if there's somebody comes into my team who was sent there to infiltrate it, all they're going to learn is we care, we love people, and we're doing our best to leave the world better than it is right now. That's all we're doing. And so I don't worry about it too much. So I've seen a lot of talk about these things, and I'm usually the first one to say, it's possible, sure, and be aware and be careful. I'm involved in events where there'll be dozens of speakers that are all deemed enemies of the state, and within those circumstances, there's a lot of precautions to take. I had a beautiful little elderly woman come up to me after I spoke at the Capitol in Texas, and she came up with a home cooked meal for me, and I had to decline it. I declined it, but just by saying I'm full, thank you, I ate. But the truth is I don't know who sent her, and it's probably innocent, and it was a sweet person offering a home cooked meal for me. But it also could be somebody trying to poison me. And so we have to be aware all the time, of that this is the world we live in, and there's people who don't like what we're doing, and they'll go to any length to silence us. And so it's for somebody like myself who wants to trust people and believe the best in people. I also can't be naive to think that, every food line, that's set aside for the speakers at some of these rallies I go to, I sometimes bring my own food, because all it takes is somebody, doing something to wipe out, the frontline voices. And the fact that that's real, and we've witnessed all these holistic doctors being killed for telling the truth. And we just had another German doctor who created a very, very alarming video. And I'm getting mixed messages if it was hours later or a couple of days later, but he was killed. And so we have to be careful and aware, but at the same time, if this consumes us and our every thought, then it creates darkness of the mind, because we become very paranoid and distrusting of everything. And one of the foundational elements that's missing in our society is trust. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our planet. We don't trust life. We don't see the divinity in life. And part of seeing the divinity and having faith is trust. Is trusting that even though this thing feels really bad, or whatever just happened feels and appears tragic, I trust that there's a reason for it, and it will only make me stronger and clearer and give me more power. It doesn't have to take me down. So I trust that. So when things arise in my life that feel negative or heavy, my personal practice is how do I get to a point more swiftly to recognize that it's a gift? Because there's nothing that's happened in my life. We mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that my brother died of AIDS. My mom died of cancer, bad cancer treatments 34 days later. Those are two of the greatest gifts in my life. I always say my mother's two greatest gifts she gave me was my life and her death. And she was my best friend. So it's not like I wanted her to die, but I recognized that through the sacrifice of her life, what that caused in me, that caused me to start looking behind the curtain of what I thought was reality. And that gave me a drive to be courageous in a way that I probably wouldn't have been before, because now it's in service and in honor of my mother and my brother. And without those, some of the strongest people that I've dealt with that blow my mind and that I would classify as true heroes are mothers and fathers who've had children damaged by the vaccine or by vaccines. Those are some of the strongest warriors on this planet. They've already lost their child. And there's nothing you can do or to say to them to scare them away from doing what they're doing. A fragile person is somebody who's coming into it without having any of those experiences. And they will be scared very quickly, and they will do an about face the moment any kind of threat comes at them. They'll shut down, they'll stop, they're scared. But man, you cannot scare a mother. The two most powerful things I've witnessed are people who've had a direct experience with a loved one that's been damaged, and somebody who has a really powerful connection with what they call God.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely agree. Love that answer. And like you've spoke to a lot of people, and I mean, I kind of go on my podcast down the solutions line, and I know because I spoke to you maybe a year ago, and you were starting something on trying to, maybe on the blockchain side of things, which kind of long-winded, but for a few answers. One, the people that you've met that you think they've got the right solutions and what we should be doing, and then what you're doing yourself.
Well, there's a lot of technologies that are being created right now, and it is again back to my metaphor of looking at our inventions and understanding that our inventions are an outpicturing of us understanding our metaphysical relationship with life. And so we consider that when the first PCs, personal computers that we received, they were massive, giant, heavy, and they could barely process words. But there they were in our house, and it was amazing to have a personal computer. It was a big revelation in the world of technology. And then we created this thing called the internet. And it made every computer a supercomputer, so to speak. No longer was it just limited to the data that was programmed on it in the factory, but it was now linkable to all the other computers in the world containing all their own data. So it became kind of this infinite source of information. And that's similar to the progression of what's happening, I believe, with humanity right now. We have been programmed to working off of our limited hard drive. And now we're going online. We're starting to look for information from another source outside of the brain, outside of other people's brains, but that which for me is off of beyond our limited hard drive space. We're now linking to others, and that's clear in the technologies that we've created. We're literally, it's a neural network of internet technologies that allow us now to share information infinitely, and that's why there's such a threat to the system, and why they're working so hard to limit our communication through these devices, because it's going to help us evolve. For better and for worse, the internet can be very destructive, but just like anything, we have a tendency to misuse everything that we invent and everything that we encounter. Sex is a beautiful, sacred thing, but it can be very dark. And food is a necessity, but most of the food we're consuming these days is not even food. And so it's the right use of everything. Medicine is a wonderful thing. I'm incredibly, I have a lot of reverence for medicine, but the misuse of medicine is killing people every single day. And so it's reframing these things and coming back into right relationship with the things that we invent in our lives, and to start to look at them as if it's a blueprint, a scale model of our own reality, our own universe of reality. And so we look at these things, as we invent, and we realize we don't really invent anything. We start to understand our natural technologies. And as we start to understand that we're actually energetically, even without speaking, we're transferring data all the time, important data. That's when we start to go, I wonder if we can create a telephone that is not wired, but is sent out energetically. And then we do, and we create that. The internet is an outpicturing of how we're unifying. And so it's just very important for us to begin to look at our technologies in a different way, to use them rightfully. And all of that begins with what we started talking about at the beginning here, with is really taking a more of focus of the way our children are being raised. Because all of these forces that are doing harm to our planet and to our people right now, it's either done from pure arrogance, so lack of real education, lack of learning how to critical think. You don't need to be taught to be environmentalist. We're born that way, but then we lose track of the importance of Mother Nature, and we lose that reverence for her. And so, throwing trash on the ground, we can do that when we to lose that respect. And so raising our children, think about all the people that are at the helm of these wicked agendas. If they were raised properly, would they be so dark? Would they be willing to harm thousands of people? Would they be thinking about their corporations and the advancement of more billions of dollars over the well-being of humanity? Not if they were raised right. So we have a fundamental issue with the way that our children, and a lot of it has to do with educational system and our schools being, toxic daycare centers. They're not really teaching kids what they need to learn to both navigate and lead our world. They're teaching them to be robots, to be worker bees, and they're learning by rote. They're not exploring. They're not learning through projects that fire them up, that teach them how to innovate and to actually become leaders and public speakers, and how to articulate themselves, how to process the inevitable challenges that come with being in this physical reality. They're not taught any of that. They're taught a bunch of phony history that is meant to manipulate their futures, so that they're either shamed into believing that they are the oppressor or that they are oppressed. And that's not leading our generation into anything healthy. Our next generations.
No, definitely. And like my youngest child, he's going to be 8 this month, and like I had seen your recording with your son. Is it something that you have kind of maybe considered doing, like a documentary for the children? Because at the end of the day, there's more chance of them, because we saw how it was done on the wrong side with the climate change and everything, but actually doing it on the right side.
Well, Plandemic 3 is all about the children. Yeah, it's 100% about stopping the indoctrination of our children and laying out potential pathways for parents to regain the sovereignty of how to parent their children, how to educate their children, how to keep them safe. It's an education for the parents as well, because if there's if the child is going to school and it's a wonderful school, learning wonderful things, but they come home to a toxic home environment where they're being shamed or criticized or kind of pressed into their own box of limitations, then all it's going to do is confuse the children who are learning two different ideologies from the people in their lives, their parents and their teachers. And so it's very important that the parents come together and to understand the healthier ways of engaging with their children. The importance of my focus is always, and we're gonna touch upon it. I'm sure I'm going to anger some men in the world, because I want to really examine that and lay it out in a compassionate way, but to show men that there are, as one example, the majority of men in this country that we call America know more about their favorite sports team than they do their own children. And that's a problem. They obsessively follow the Lakers or whatever it might be, and they know everything about their. I was at the gym a few years ago, and I was sitting on a bench, and I was overhearing two guys talk about the Lakers game that had just happened the night before the playoffs. And I was amazed at the information that these guys knew. They knew what college every player went to, how tall each player was, what age they were, where they were born, everything to do with their athletic skills, where they're weak, where they're strong. And I was just so tempted to interrupt these guys and say, hey guys, you have children? What's their favorite color? I know that the answer would have been like, how the hell would I know? Yeah, but you know what Kobe Bryant's favorite color is, or was at this point, but back then he was still around. And not to shame anybody, but to have them realize that all of these things, our phones and all of this binge watching that we do, and we put all of our attention in these Game of Thrones or whatever it might be, and it's taking us off the front line of our own lives. And we know more about the actors in Game of Thrones and the plots of Game of Thrones than who's running our local politics, who's making the laws and decisions that literally affects our lives directly every single day. We have no idea who's running for our local office or who's, and all of that is by design. It's the same. It's a reason that they've said forever, well, the one thing you don't do is talk politics. They don't want us talking politics. They don't want us involved in that. Just go over there and sit with your addiction and your fetish and pay close attention to every college football game and all of that, because we don't want you involved in the things that actually shape you and your family's lives. And so we have to see that's another magic trick that we have to become aware of, so that we at least divide our time equally. Have your sports. I'm coming from a very athletic family. My kids are in the backyard playing ball right now. And so it's very important, more important to engage in actual physical activity than watching it, I would say. But at least create balance, so that if you're 50% of your time is focused on college football, cool. Make the other 50%, not all of your time, but at least, at least balance that out with your understanding of the local policies that are being passed, who's actually running. Because what most people do is they're shamed into voting, and they go and they get some kind of a cheat sheet from a friend, and they just go click down, okay, let me vote for everybody on my team. Okay, cool. And they have no idea that they're ushering in the very policies that we're all right now being enslaved by. We've done this. It's us. There is a they, but it is a us that is actually allowing they to have power. And the moment we stop doing that, there is no they.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I understand that as well. Like at the local level, if everybody takes interest in the local level, they
Yeah.
can they can pull the strings from the top. But if it's not being moved, they don't get what they want in life.
That's right.
Yeah. And just regarding the children, I remember like paying attention to that years ago, like even 20 years ago or more. I'd be talking to people, say on a construction site, and I wouldn't even know that they had a child, and it was bothering me. I was like, why they, for me, it's the most important thing in my life. I just adore my children.
Yeah.
And like, like some people, like you said about the football team, they'll talk about everything else and they don't mention their children. So I think if we give, our hearts to our children, you see the love that comes from children is, beyond what you'll see from any adult.
Yeah, that's right.
Listen, appreciate your time, and I'll give it back to Grace to close it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mikki, do you want to share what your shirt, what it says on your shirt? Because there's power, there's frequency in every letter and in every word.
Yeah. So it's Awaken the Lions. We started a new apparel line, and during the time when I was being censored and banned everywhere, there was a real concerted effort to figuring out how do I continue to keep my voice out in the world, because they were banning me everywhere. I literally do podcasts, and whether this is paranoia or not, it was the fact that it happened so much. I had to really think, like, is this intentional? How many podcasts did I do shortly after pandemic that they'd have technical problems? They would just be zapped. We'd get in 5 minutes and it'd be gone. And I thought, is there somebody really watching me at this level? This is kind of crazy. And so we started an apparel line with t-shirts and hats and hoodies with a bunch of powerful statements, because we thought we really must, this I will say we have to start considering the way that we have been led into being unwitting promoters of these corporate empires that are doing incredible harm to our planet and our people. And so we find it a weird status symbol to wear Nike and Hurley and Adidas and all these things. And the majority of these companies, they have sweatshops, they have slave labor in other nations, Apple, all of it. And so we thought, let's start an apparel line where we can people can, if we're going to be walking billboards, we might as well say something. And so we have these powerful t-shirts, and we have a new company that we call the Rebel Lion. Or if you look at it at an angle, you might think that it says the Rebellion. And we did that intentionally. And so this is one of the shirts from the collection. And what it means for us is, it's from the cliche that there's lions and sheeps, and we have been sheeps for so long. But we were born lions. And so, we're lions in sheep clothing. And so we need to step up and understand that we are the kings and queens of this jungle. And so to awaken the lions means, let's drop this tendency to follow the herd as sheeps, and understand that we all have a voice, and we're capable of roaring, and that it's time to roar right now. It's time on our planet. And the more of us to step up to realize that we're lions and lioness, the faster that we will turn this ship around.
Fantabulous, as someone said. How about your book? You just published. You want to say something?
Yeah, I would love to say something about the book, because it surprised me. It's doing really well. It reached #2 on Amazon. We had to sell it on Amazon. I want people to realize that there's a necessary evil called Amazon. And right now, until these new technologies we're building are implemented in the world, Amazon is a massive machine. And we had to make the choice between, having something on that platform and reaching the world. And so, we had to succumb to that. And I'm really hoping by my next book, and there will be a next book, which will be a children's series, that we no longer need Amazon, but right now we do. And so it went #2 on Amazon, and it is a book that is all 5-star reviews right now. And it is written from a position, it's not just a rehash of the information in the movie. It is written from a point of view to really rehumanize, to reunite us, and to inspire us to understand what's coming and how important it is that we all play an active, conscious role in that. And so people are giving me feedback saying that it was the thing that woke up their father finally, or their wife, or their sister or brother, or whatever, their best friends, that it's written in a way that's not so bombastic that it just becomes something that's discarded, but it's written with a logic to it, showing the data as we go, but also really talking about some of the ideas that we've discussed on this podcast, of the importance of us coming back to our original power of nature, and discovering within that life purpose that we knew when we were children, but somehow got distracted from. And so that is the feedback I've been getting has been really remarkable. And all of this is available. Our movies are free. We never charge a dime for any of our movies, never profit from any of our movies. The book is on the site at plandemicseries.com. And I highly recommend people to sign up for our newsletter that's on that same page, plandemicseries.com, because that's where we do most of our communication. I'm not online at all anymore. I shut down my Facebook and everything. Somebody started a Twitter page for me, but I've never used it, and I'm glad now. I'll probably just end up shutting that down totally. I want nothing to do with those platforms. So we do most of our communication through email blasts that happen every week or every other week. And so sign up for that. But there's also, beyond the 2 Plandemic movies, and soon to be a third in 3 or 4 months, there's a little snippets that I highly recommend people to look at on the Plandemic site. The truth about the WHO, about the CDC, about Bill Gates, about the birth of Big Pharma. There's little short 5 to 15-minute long short films that were extracted from Plandemic 2 that is a nice place to start, to learn from and to also help educate others from. Sometimes they won't watch a 70, 80-minute movie, but if you send them an 11-minute clip about Bill Gates and you show them actually people in India talking about what he's done there, they start to understand that there's something a little bit more dark and disturbing than the narrative that he is the world's greatest philanthropist. And so plandemicseries.com is where it all is. And I ask people, if they go out and buy the book, please leave a review. And if they have any personal reach out, send a message through that same site. And anything that's addressed to me comes to me, and I actually read it all. It's nobody else reading it, it's me. I read them. I don't always have the time to get back to everybody, but I read absolutely. I've told the person who goes through the emails, anything that's directed to me, please send it to me. And usually at midnight, I go through all the emails and read them all. And it's very helpful, and I love engaging with people that way. And when I have time, I respond to people directly and thank them for reaching out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And to end, I'd like to offer divine reverence to all our children, to all our elders living and those who have gone beyond us. And I say, mano po. And that means bless you in Filipino. And also divine reverence to our eternal protector, eternal love, and still point, field of source consciousness. I say, salamat po.
Salamat po.
Gid, that's the language in your wife's native language, and mabalos, that's my language. And I say thank you to everyone. And thank you for the engagement. The viewers had their own conversations, and I say, and one of the best statement also that I got from the viewers, and thank you, Atmar, he's also a podcaster, and to remind us that there's a Hawaiian song and poem that says, I am sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you.
Ho'oponopono, very powerful medicine.
That's right. See, I know you would know it. Thank you.
I would like to say thank you so much for that. And I would like to say that this has not been announced yet, so this might be the first time people hear this. But I'd like to give the deepest prayers and blessings to the husband of Judy Mikovits, the subject of Plandemic 1. He passed away last night. And so this is not known yet in the world. I'm sure it'll be coming out very soon. But I spoke with Judy right before his passing last night. So he made the transition. He's had an illness for several years that he finally succumbed to and transitioned last night. So God bless his soul. Thank you. His name is David. Thank you, David, for the support and the love and the power that you've given that incredible wife of yours to allow her to do what she's doing, and that is saving millions of lives. God bless you, friend.
Taishen to do it. And that's the Anuhasi language of amen.
Amen.
Give us short moment of pause for the husband, and we can all do that. Mabalos.